we were born with Mickey Mouse. And it's a long way from Mickey Mouse to Ram. This is that question. Is it all grace or is my effort required? You know? And she says, Krishna Das, it's all grace. But you have to act like it isn't.
For Shiva, for Ram, for Ganesh, for Kali, Durga, they are the thing. And with Hanuman, he is the one that bows to the thing, so to speak. It's a very different role, and I can't think of another parallel in that way.
When my life gets shattered and there's so-called external suffering, I feel more called to the divine, and I've felt bliss that's come for that, but it took a lot to get there.
It's this feeling of basic goodness, basic okayness. And that's what we're trying to find. It's not out there. It's not this great love that's out there in the sky. It's the feeling within us that it's that presence.
Hello everybody, welcome to this beautiful day where we're blessed with a beautiful soul here, Krishna Das, who we all listen to his music, and we're very grateful that you are here. And Jeremy, you have a very, very deep, long relationship with Krishna Das.
Yeah, I've known him for many years, was honored to tell his story to some extent. I remember when we were first talking about the idea of doing it, you said, all right, you can make a film on me, and all of the time I talk crap about people, you just have to cut it out, and if you have anything left, you can make a movie out of it. So whatever was left, we made a movie out of it.
And I wanted to say one thing before we started as well, and that was, you know, I met my spiritual teacher when I was probably about 14 or 15, and I really fell in love with him for many years. Then I ended up studying in his ashram for 2 years in India, in my like when I was 20 and 21 years old, and he left his body a few years after I left the ashram in 2003. And when I watched the movie that Jeremy and you created, I sobbed. Like for me, because I felt like I lost my teacher. I even went through deep sadness because I was, guided by my teacher. And then when I watched the movie, I just remember sobbing, just remembering. After so many years of being apart and hearing your story with your teacher, it brought me to such deep tears. And I recommend anyone that's been away from their teacher, that story is just incredibly moving. So I'm very grateful that y'all told it. It helped me heal.
I'm grateful I lived through it.
So today we've been in our world talking about prana, and part of the reason we were very excited to talk to you is about the relationship between Hanuman and prana. And it's said that Hanuman is an incarnation of prana, and I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
I'd like to hear me talk about that too, if I knew something about it. But let me just say one thing. If you want, who you should talk to about this is Robert Svoboda. He's got this. I'm just giving him a plug. He's a good friend, but he's got a 4-part retelling of the Ramayana with all the deepest stuff. It's extraordinary. And most of what I know about this particular subject comes from what I've heard him talking about. Maharaj Ji, my guru, Neem Karoli Baba, he didn't talk about these kind of things. He didn't teach, he didn't write books, he didn't give lectures. He just gave you more puris and potatoes than you could ever eat and then told you to get out of there, leave, get out. Go away, Jao. He used to say, Jao is my mantra. Go away is my mantra. So everything that all these subjects about spiritual work and spiritual practice, and this is what we left at the door when we entered the temple with him. And it's also what we put back on when we left the temple at the end of the whole situation. But being in his presence in the presence of a true saint, you have no questions. You have no question. You have no questions, and you don't need any answers, because you've been allowed. You've been let into the place where love really lives within us, and you realize that's all you ever wanted. Nothing matters at all, as long as you can be in this loving presence. Then when you get booted out of that presence, that's when the shit hits the fan. Then you have to start learning stuff, which is just kind of, what you have to do during the day. But yes, Hanuman, I'm on a kind of a roll these days with this particular thought, is that we speak about these beings and we use a lot of these terms, and we don't have the slightest idea what they really mean and what they really refer to. Because all we can do is project from our own limited understanding, subjective version of things, right? But what they say is that, and what Robert said, Dr. Sabota said, is that Hanumanji is the controller of the prana, even in the body as well. And Prana is life, the life force. And so by invoking that presence of Hanuman, we vitalize that life force within us. Maharaj used to say to us, "Who's Hanuman? Who's Hanuman?" We give all the pat answers, this perfect servant, blah, blah. And he said, Ram ke swas, the breath of Ram, right? Breath is life. And there's a book called the Unvarnished New Testament, and it's a translation from the original Greek, which was written down about 100 years after Jesus left. And in that writing, in that version, which was apparently the first written version of it, maybe there was something in Aramaic before, I'm not sure, but it says what's translated in the King James as spirit, the word for spirit, the Holy Spirit. In this more original version, the word is breath, the holy breath. Mm-hmm. And the breath is in the body. The breath is our connection to life. But you see what they did what later Christianity did was they took that away from us and put it somewhere else where we'd have to buy it by doing things. But that's a whole other story. But we all have this breath. And without the breath, the body is just not there. It goes. And they say that our trauma and our karmas are stored in our subtle bodies, the breath body, the energy bodies, and that by invoking Hanuman, those channels are purified and cleaned out. Because it's very much like in the Hanuman Chalisa, where they say the dust on the mirror of the heart. So what we see in our universe, for our own personal version of the universe, is dictated by how our prana flows through our channels. And if there's blockage, which there is, it changes the way what we see out there. When there's no blockage, there's unity, there's one. All those blockages are our so-called egoistic self ideas and stuff, which is, millions of lifetimes of shit accumulated in our channels. But once again, with Hanuman, it's not about that. It's not about getting anything like that. It's about the love, the connection to that inner being, the inner presence, which is always here. It's not something we have to create. It's impossible to create. It's already created. We are it. It's in us. It's our own true nature. So through cleaning out our channels and invoking Hanuman, we uncover once again this for ourselves, this beautiful presence within us, which doesn't come and go. You know, you don't fall in it or fall out of it. It's who we are. So it's not something we have to make happen. It's something that we bow to, and in that bowing, in that ultimate, finally, surrender, we merge with what's already here, with what we truly are.
My journey over the last 2 decades or so, I was very early on, I started getting really heavy into like different kriyas and meditations and austerities. And, it was a nice voyage for me. I got to learn a lot about what can actually happen in the body. And over the last 1.5 years, I've been working with this healer here in Asheville, and she made me do this exercise where I lay down and I was just saying, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved. It wasn't really much of an explanation, except there was some holotropic breathing and just saying that. And I remember just breaking down, not even knowing that I needed to know that I was loved. And it kind of shattered so many kind of preoccupations and spiritual structures to the simplest fact that I am loved. And now, anytime I listen to like a Kirtan, I listen to it while I'm working, I just tear up. I just tear up. And it really seems like I chased all these things, but now it just seems the simplicity of her voice or the simplicity of knowing that I'm loved by a being has just opened up so much and like had these emotions come out. And I don't know if I'm projecting, but when you talk, I see your eyes get a little moist, and when you're talking about Hanuman or whatever the case may be. But
it's allergies.
Can you explain to us the simplicity of our connection to the divine as opposed to like overthinking it or over-structuring it?
Yeah, for sure, yeah. I mean, I remember once I had this dream, I was coming back to Earth, reincarnating, coming from somewhere out there, I don't know, up there. And I was heading right back home to India. I was really happy. At the last minute, I made a left turn and wound up in New York. And I remember I had another dream once where...
Are we in that dream right now?
No, not that one. This is a slightly different one. I had this dream where Maharaj Ji looked at the Westerners. We were all around him, and he said, oh, these people, they're from chapter 8 in the Gita. So I looked up chapter 8, and it's a chapter on fallen yogis. So, this, yeah. So we're working out stuff, That's what we're doing. And, yeah. The ego, the so-called ego, takes over, the neurosis takes over our spiritual practice so fast, so subtly, we don't even notice. We keep trying to get something. The whole idea of trying to get something, make ourselves better, transform ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like Ramana Maharshi says, asking the mind or the ego to kill the mind or the ego is like asking the thief to be the policeman. There'll be a lot of investigation, but no arrest will ever be made. And so it's very hard to find that balance between practice and purification and just being, And, one time I asked Siddhima, Maharaj's great disciple, I said, Maharaj used to say to us, he would look at us and he'd say, I have the keys to the mind. I could turn your minds against me. And we'd, Baba, don't do that. And he'd laugh, ha, But he said, I have the keys to the mind. So I said to Ma, Maharaj says he has the keys to the mind. So to me, that means that I am wherever he places me. I am where he wants me to be every moment of every day. So, is it all his business, or do I have to do something? You know, this is that question. Is it all grace, or is my effort required? You know, and she says, Krishna Das, it's all grace, but you have to act like it isn't. Oh, so good. That's so good. Yeah. So, and then, you know, Maharaj Ji once said to his old devotee, Dada, he said, Dada, if I've done one thing in this life, I've remained wherever Ram has placed me. So, you know, for us Westerners, or we Westerners, we're so goal-oriented. Our unworthiness and our self-hatred and all our stuff, it just pushes us so incessantly from behind. It's very hard to recognize how much we're in our own way, you know.
I think one thing that in hearing stories of the devotees of Maharaj Ji that really helped me just kind of expand into the world being far more mysterious than I had ever thought was hearing the stories where these deities that we often in this day and age think of as mythology or characters and stories, how they were real and are real. And stories of Maharaj Ji taking on Hanuman's form, and of Siddhi Ma talking about at Lanka that the bridge was real and it was all real. Can you talk about that a little bit and maybe share one or two of the stories of people talking about seeing Maharaj Ji in Hanuman's form and the relationship between mythology and living presence?
I've been going to India for over 50 years. Do I believe that piece of stone that I'm bowing to really has life in it? Or is it just a piece of stone that I'm looking at and kind of playing the game with? Very hard for us. We were born with Mickey Mouse, and it's a long way from Mickey Mouse to Ram. It's a long way. We really, to touch something real only happens by grace, actually. And to the extent that we've touched that place, that's how much our universe, that's how much the world we live in reflects it. Maharaj Ji was considered to be an avatar of Hanuman. What those words really mean, I don't have a clue, really. I mean, I know what's written about Hanuman, what they say about Hanuman, so really all I know is my experience with Maharaj Ji. That's the only thing I know. Everything else is secondhand. So they used to say about Maharaj Ji that he had no ichcha of his own. So ichcha means desire, but also in this case it means like an agenda. Everything that happened, whether he got up and walked across the courtyard or hit you with a piece of fruit, everything that happened was the doing of Rama's. And in the text, they talk about how Hanumanji jumped over the ocean. In fact, there's that beautiful bhajan written by Tulsidas, where it's the story of when, after the war is over, and Rama, Sita, Hanuman Ji, and the monkeys come back. They come back to Ayodhya, and they meet Bharat, who's been sitting just outside the kingdom, outside the capital, worshipping Rama's sandals for all the years that Rama's been away, 14 years or something like that, 13. 13 years the bar mitzvah, maybe it was 14, I don't know. And they come and they meet Bharat. And after greeting everybody, Bharat looks around and he sees Hanuman. And he says to Ram, "Who's this monkey? What's he doing here?" And Ram says, "Bharat the bhai, kapise urena hamanai." He said, "Oh Bharat, oh brother Bharat, I can never repay the debt I owe to this monkey." And every verse of the bhajan describes one of the things that Hanuman Ji did. He said he jumped over the ocean, he killed the demons, he found Sita, and not once did the thought arise that he was the doer of any of those actions. Hanuman Ji saw that everything was surrounded in Ram's colors, in the presence of Ram. And it might look like he was doing something, but he wasn't fooled by that. He never identified with being the doer. There was no ego at all. Each verse is so beautiful. I mean, it's incredibly beautiful by then. And yes, being with Maharaj Ji, we were brought into that space where we could feel the absence of any edge, any limitation, any place where this presence was not. There could be no place outside of this presence. And Maharaj Ji is that presence. He's become that presence. And so being with him would bring us into that room where we could experience that ourselves in very limited doses for limited periods of time, because you always get kicked out by your own stuff. So, and there was another thing, Hanumanji is Rudratmakaya. He's he's the manifestation of Shiva. Shiva's energy came to Anjana through the wind god, and which is also very important that it's the wind god. Wind is prana. Wind is energy in the body. So Hanumanji is actually a form of Shiva. And the old devotees that I knew, the really old devotees, they actually saw Maharaj Ji as Shiva himself. Tiwari, and this old devotee, Vishwambar from Aligarh, this incredible man who was poor, rough guy, used to come with all his puja stuff, the talis and the artis and everything, and he would stand outside the room and wait for Maharaj Ji to come out. And Maharaj would say, "Oh, he's out there, I won't go. He's out there, he's brought this, he's brought that, he's going to do his puja. I'm not going to go. And no, Baba, you should go." "Okay, I go." And he would come out and Vishwambar would start, chanting all these mantras. And he was a rough guy. It was beautiful, but... And then when he was finished, he'd start singing the arti to Shiva. And he'd go in samadhi. And he'd be standing there like... And Maharaj would go, "Kya hua? What happened? What happened? What's going on? What happened? Oh," like this. It was so insane. I mean, it was just, this is how we learned. This is, to be around this, to see this, to experience this from ourselves, what was possible. And then like later on, this guy would be wandering around completely blissed out, and he'd come up to us and he'd say, "Who are you people, the Westerners? Who are you? Are you the gods incarnated to be with Maharaj Ji? Who are you? Like, he was like mad. He was totally crazy. So yeah, once again, this is, like, if you want to learn, you got to talk to Svoboda if you want to know anything about this shit. But this is all I can do.
Yeah. You know, so Ram goes to the forest. The Pandavas go to the forest. And, you know, I feel there are a few times, I can just speak personally in my life, that my world has just been shattered. But when my life gets shattered and there's so-called external suffering, I feel more called to the divine, and I've felt bliss that's come for that. But it took a lot to get there, as opposed to a normal running life. Can you talk a little bit about the going to the forest and what that means from an analogy perspective? And also, do we have to go through all the suffering to long for the divine, or is there an easier way to feel this bliss?
No. There's no easy way. The suffering is our own karmas unfolding. You can't blame it on anybody. Everything in our lives, everything we're seeing this moment, everything we see, everything we hear, everything we feel, everybody that we know, is all dictated by our karmas. Every experience we have is dictated by our karmas. The only place we have any free choice is in the moment. How we live, how we meet each moment. That's the deal. We can't change the past, and the future's not here. All we have is this moment. How we live in this moment with whatever arises is the big issue. If we fight against the suffering, if we blame all this, it's, which is our go-to, position, blaming other people for our pain. But there are no other people. Everybody's just playing a part in our drama, just like we're playing a part in other people's drama. And that's very fierce teaching, but it's actually the key to freedom. It's not fate that banishes you to hell forever. Besides, heaven and hell are states of mind that last as long as you have the karmas to be there. When the karmas run out, boom, next, They feel eternal because that's the quality of the experience. But they're not eternal. Eternal bliss or eternal damnation are states of mind. Just like this is a state of mind that we're in, dictated by our karmas. So, and Buddha said the same thing. He came out of the jungle and his first teaching was, hey, guess what? There's suffering. And you better pay attention to it because suffering is the cause of unhappiness. And if you want to find freedom, you have to find out what the causes of this suffering are. There's no other way to go. So that's across the board. And, why do we suffer? How do we suffer? And how do we release that suffering? If we're busy blaming it on other people or on the world or on politics and whatever is causing us angst at this point, then we're just imprisoning ourselves again and again. But if we see it as manifestation of our own stuff, obviously that gives us the freedom and the possibility of calming our asses down and coming back home. And without that possibility, we're just lost in reaction again and again. But there's no escape. This world, everything is changing. Everything is impermanent in this world. Everything's changing. You and I, in a few years, at a point that we don't know, we won't be here like this. And everything that we treasured, all our little good things, my nice little coffee thing here, which I love so much, I won't have it anymore. somebody else will probably just throw it out. So, yeah, and look at Ram Dass. I mean, this is the best example that I have for this, because living with Ram Dass for 50 years, and especially in the last 20 years of his life after the stroke, I watched how he continually and more deeply surrendered into the moment, into the acceptance of it, and found joy and peace and presence. Even though he's sitting in pain, he can't do anything for himself. His brain doesn't work the way it worked. He's got neuropathy from diabetes. He's got hip replacement and shoulder stuff. He can't turn himself in bed anymore. Not once in 20 years did I ever hear him complain. And every month or two, he'd break out in a urinary tract infection and have to be rushed to the hospital, and they have to find the right antibiotic again. No, he never complained. His will got so strong, but not to change the situation, to be with it as it is, and to really be with it, to be present, to be aware, to be alive, not to regret. Someone else has that experience, a catastrophic stroke, and they're in a wheelchair, and they spend their whole lives pissed off and angry and depressed and ruining everybody's life around them because they just, So that's also, and so, when, you may not know this, but when he first had the stroke, he thought that Maharaj Ji gave him that stroke, and he called it fierce grace. This is fierce grace. I accept it as fierce grace, which wasn't really true. It wasn't a good thing. And when he went to see Siddhima in India, the only time after the stroke in the wheelchair, she immediately looked right at him and said, Ram Dass, Maharaj Ji didn't give you the stroke. He would never do anything like that. The stroke is your karma. What Maharaj Ji gives you is the grace and the blessings to overcome the negative effects of that karma. And he did. He did.
I've heard this word so many times, and the concept of awareness or the observer, and it's beautiful. It gives a sense of peace if you're lucky enough, or you have the grace enough to slip into that state. And one thing that Ram Dass has really, I never knew him, but his work over the last few years, I exposed myself to his conversations, and he uses this phrase, loving awareness. And that has really just sat right with me, as opposed to just the awareness, which is the peace. But there's something that the bliss, like this concept, I don't know, I can't really put words to it, but when I think of the awareness of being loving awareness, like the ubiquity of the universe being loving awareness as opposed to just awareness, there's something that just sits right about that. It's very...
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more palatable, like a sugar syrup that medicine is hidden in. The quality of awareness is loving, compassionate, kind, unitive. It's just Westerners with this separation between, and their own self-hatred. When they think about awareness or try to practice awareness, it looks cold and empty, and there's no... But that's just neurosis.
Well, I have a little bit of neurosis.
That's just our neurosis, But yes, Ram Dass used to, he came up with that and he used to say, I am loving awareness. Finally, I said to him, cut out the I am. And after that, he would just go, loving awareness. But still, it's in the realm of practice. And so practice means you use a tool to allow something to happen, to create something. So yeah, I mean, it's very powerful because we don't let ourselves feel what you could call our basic okayness. Just okay, the way we are, we're okay. Mm-hmm. There's a book called Going on Being by a Buddhist psychiatrist, and Mark Epstein. And in it, he talks about, he reimagines Buddha's enlightenment, the moment of Buddha's enlightenment. And he doesn't imagine it, he just goes through it again from a psychiatric point of view. And there was Buddha doing all these practices that were taught in those days. And they were very fierce, austere practices. He was barely eating, barely breathing, sitting in samadhi, for all day long, day after day after day. When finally he realized, wait a minute, if I continue on this path like this body's going to go. It's almost gone now. And I don't have what I'm looking for yet. I'm not finished. And he began to get terrible despair. And he sat with this despair. And in that despair, a memory came to him from his childhood. This is all in the scriptures, apparently. A memory came to him from his childhood when he was sitting under a tree, watching his father, who was king, plow a ceremonial plowing of a small field in the kingdom. And sitting under that tree in the shade, watching his father work in the distance, he had this experience of this wonderful feeling of okayness, of basic goodness. Then, of course, it passed. So now, under the Bodhi tree, he's sitting there. Actually, it wasn't under the Bodhi tree. He got up and moved somewhere else. But under this tree, he's sitting there in this terrible... And he remembered that, right? That memory came back to him, along with that feeling. And he kind of freaked out a little bit, because this was a good feeling, a blissful feeling. And that's not what I'm doing here. But being the Buddha, he said, okay, what is this feeling, right? And he looked at it and he saw the feeling that he had didn't come from the senses meeting with an object of pleasure, not even subtly. And then he saw that nor was it a result of the senses being separated from an object of suffering, a painful object, a painful experience. So it appeared to have no cause. So he said, if it has no cause, then it must be natural. And then he said, maybe the way to enlightenment is through this feeling, right? And then this village woman walks by with some kheer, I think it was, or some yogurt, and he put his hands out like this. She poured some food in, and he ate it. And he had 5 disciples who were sitting there with him all this time, waiting for him to get the shit so he could give it to them. And they looked at each other and said, oh, Gautama has left the path, because he ate food. And they got up and left him. And then Buddha wandered off further into the jungle, sat down under this tree, and the rest is history. So it's this feeling of basic goodness, basic okayness. We've lost. We're not in touch with that. And that's what we're trying to find. It's not out there. It's not this great love that's out there in the sky. It's the feeling within us that it's that presence. And like, to bring it back to prana, devotion, the path of devotion, it opens up so much energy in the body, so much prana, without even thinking about it that way. And in that flow of love and flow of contact and flow of presence, a lot of purification goes on in the nadis and in the body. Without it being, now I'm going to do kriyas, now I'm going to do this, I'm going to hold my breath for like 3 days, and none of that shit. But it's not that stuff's not useful, but, we all have to find out what's going to help us get to the place that we're already in.
This morning I was thinking a lot about Hanuman as we were getting ready to have this conversation. And one thing I'd never thought of before is how different the character and role of Hanuman is than any of the other deities. Where for Shiva, for Ram, for Ganesh, for Kali, Durga, they are the thing. And with Hanuman, he is the one that bows to the thing, so to speak. It's a very different role, and I can't think of another parallel in that way, where that devotion, he is the embodiment of that devotion. And I think there's something it makes it easier to assume that feeling than it is, I am Shiva, I am Ram. We feel so inadequate and unworthy of even trying to embody that in a way. But with Hanuman, there's something that feels much closer to it, where I strive to just simply bow and simply, and there's something so beautiful and unique about Hanuman in that way.
Yeah, it's true. And of course, the ego's only too happy to be Shiva, I am Shiva.
Was that?
Everybody bow to me. Come on, get over here. Give me $20 and you can bow to me. Yeah, that's very easy for us, and very unfortunately, very much out there. Yeah, so Hanumanji is very safe that way. I mean, Ramana Maharshi said, he said, asking him or her to do as you wish is not surrender, then you're trying to tell the universe what to do. So Hanumanji doesn't do that. He bows. He just bows. Yeah. There's so many stories about Maharaj Ji. At Dada's house, Maharaj Ji came out of the room once with Tiwari, and he was like 8 feet tall, and he couldn't get through the door to leave the house, and he had his dhoti wrapped around himself, hanging out like a tail in the back. And the funny thing is that Tiwari was with him, Mr. Tiwari, my Indian father, K.C. Tiwari, a great old devotee, and a great yogi himself. Tiwari was with him, and as usual, Dada and his wife, they had this experience of Maharaji like this, but they didn't realize that Tiwari was also seeing it. See, he was always also seeing these things. And as Tiwari used to say, he kept my head cool. Tiwari would say that. I was seeing what everybody, but he kept my head cool. So it was Tiwari that told me that story. And then it was written in one of Dada's books. If you want to read a beautiful book about devotion, it's The Near and the Dear. No, By His Grace. That's the first one that Dada wrote, By His Grace. Is it there, right there? Yeah. This is a gem. It's such a gem. It's just such a gem. It's really, and it's not, Dada didn't write it. We used to go see him, and he would just talk. He would just tell stories, all the time, because all he ever did was think about Maharaj Ji. That was all that was in his head. And when the Westerners showed up, he had an opportunity to talk to them, and so over years and years, we recorded the stories, and then years later, somebody transcribed them, and then somebody edited them, and this and that, and then a book. So it wasn't planned, but Dada was incredible. It's an incredible story.
At this point in your life, what is your relationship to practice?
That's how you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. at this point in my life, my relationship to practice is, God damn it, why don't I do more of it? You know, that's my relationship. Yeah, no, I wish I could do more, but that's just my shtick, you know. I see all these people doing all these mantras and all these millions of mantras a day, you know, and I was like, okay, I do my little 108 and go back to sleep, you know. But really, practice is not, that's limiting the idea of practice, making it too small. Practice is, how do you go through your day? How do you see other people? How do you treat other people? How are you present? Are you aware of what's going on around you? Or are you just lost, you know? How many hours do you spend lost in Facebook Reels or in this, on Instagram, you know, watching TV? How many hours are we just gone? It's quite a bit of time that we're just gone, actually. Even studying or learning, are you present or are you just gone? You know, it's interesting. So presence is a practice in itself. And there's a beautiful book called Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, an old Christian monk. It's really a lovely, lovely, lovely book. Practicing the Presence of God, I think is the name of it.
He was the one that worked in the kitchen at the monastery, right?
I don't know. I didn't read the book. I just know about it.
You know, Dr. Ladd, one thing he's been saying for years and years and years, and it's taken a while for it to hit through this noggin, and that is that no matter what spiritual practices we do, he said, just remember the knack of entering into a state, you know? And then it took me years to understand, what is he talking about? But then now it's like, whether you're doing Kirtan or a peaceful meditation or a walk in nature or listening to a weird joke, you know, whatever it is, you can always slip into this space. And I know, Krishna Das, you don't like compliments, but I just feel, even in this conversation, you just slip into there. You know, you slip into that space. So I think that that's practice. You know, it's something that we're learning in our own ways, it's kind of like that heart-centered presence, right? And I think it's just really beautiful. It's a beautiful example for everyone all of our viewers to see that. I think it's very special.
You know, the other idea about practice is planting seeds, you know. Every time you pay attention, every mantra you chant, every time you're aware, every time you do, we're planting seeds of the things that we want, positive seeds. And sattvic seeds. You know, sattva is not pleasure or pain. It's kind of really beyond that, ultimately. Tuari and I used to argue about that. I would say, he'd talk about sattva. I said, sattva is just another mind, another state of mind. It's just another guna. And he laughed. Like, who knew? I had no idea what I'm talking about. But we used to fight. He was great. He was great. He used to love to argue, you know. He would say something that would piss me off so much. Then he'd go, "You will fire upon me now?" You know, he's ready to party. You know, and it was liberating for me to get angry and argue with somebody, nose to nose, eye to eye. You know, and that it was okay. Was, you know, been not in my house growing up. Don't look at me like that. Don't raise your voice to me. You know, we were really pressed down by our upbringing. We're really constrained, really repressed, really forced into a shape of that's going to suffer. And it takes a lot to kind of open that up. And pranayama, asana, it's really good for us because we are so identified with the body and so much trauma is stuck in our bodies. It's really good to work with that as well as devotional practices, so to speak. At least, I mean, Siddhima had told me to do pranayama, but I never did it. And then one day we were in the room with her, and there was a Western woman there who Ma had also told to do asana and pranayama. So she was talking to this woman, and the woman said, Ma, I'm okay with the pranayama, but the asana I can't do. She said, that's okay, just do the pranayama. Krishna Das. Like, okay. So since that day, I have done every day I can, except when I'm traveling or whatever. Yeah, I'll never forget that. Oh, it's okay, just do the pranayama, Krishna Das. So yeah,
one practice that I feel like you have been instrumental in bringing into the Western world is the Hanuman Chalisa. And it's so fascinating being at a place like Bhakti Fest, or even here, and hearing how many people know the Chalisa, have taken the time to learn and to go into it, because it's not an easy practice to learn.
No, it's not easy. It definitely, you have to be out of your fucking mind to even try it. But this is Maharaj's grace, He gave us that practice. The situations, as usual, just evolved what looked like to be completely naturally by accident. And here we are 50 years later, and the Hanuman Chalisa is being chanted all around the world, not just in India, not just by Indian people. And he talked about the Chalisa. He said the Hanuman Chalisa is Mahamantra. Every line is Mahamantra. Every line is the great name. And it can change fate, he said. Of course, I don't know what word he used for fate. Probably karma. It can change karmas, which is extraordinary, And and there's a practice that they do, I was told about this practice back when my first visit to India early on, that if you do 108 chalisas and you make a little altar and you ask for a boon, because the last lines of the chalisa are, all your, those who chant the chalisa get what they want. So you ask for a boon, you want something, you need something. And you sit down and you do this puja, and you do 108 chalisas, and you get it. And so I did that in 1971, probably. By that time, it must have been 71. And I never told anybody. And then some years ago with Siddhima, I forget what was going on, but she looked at me and she said, you see, Krishnadas, you see what doing Hanuman Chalisa has brought for you? Because, it's a difficult practice because it takes a lot of dedication to learn the Chalisa. But that's what they say about difficult practices, that's the deeper seeds are planted with the difficult practice. For instance, 108 Rams, Ram is one thing, but 108 Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, 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 Hare, 108 of those is a little bit more difficult. And longer mantras are also take more dedication, and they demand more attention and more shakti, but it's just a different way of planting seeds. And Hanuman Chalisa can really remove obstacles from your life. There's no question about it. Whenever I'm really stuck, really stuck in something that just seems immovable, that's what I'll do. I'll do that practice. And it always shifts. It always shifts. Maybe not within 2 seconds after I finish, but in the following short period of time, things will shift for me. And what I asked for back in 1971 is definitely happening. It took about 45 years or so, 40 years. But that's okay. That's because of my karmas.
The big trees, the seeds take a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when the seeds are planted in a big rocky place with lots of rocks.
We're so grateful for your bhakti, your love, and your light, and it's just been beautiful setting. It's really the most beautiful one that we've done thus far, and we're very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope someday I'll be able to come to Asheville and sing.
Anytime,
we would
love it.
Yeah.
We'd love
Anytime.
to. We'd love it.
We'll try to figure it out. Last time I was there, I sang in a bar, I think, right? Something like that. Some weird place. It was
Maybe.
a long time ago.
I think you sang at the Orange Peel. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we have a nicer place. There's no alcohol. Dr. Lod chants in here all the time. It's
Good juju.
good juju in here.
Good. I hope coffee.
And we're really, really grateful that we have so much of your chanting and talking on our platform, AyurPrana Plus. We've got One Track Heart, the film. We have your whole Bhakti Fest performance, beautiful conversation with you and Dr. Lod. So we're really grateful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I never got a chance to see it. Yeah, I finished recording some new chants and stuff. So I'm working on them now, mixing them. I don't know when they're gonna come out, but it seems pretty good.
I'm excited to hear it.
Okay.
With David or?
Everybody. The usual suspects are in the studio.
David was producing it?
No, actually, nobody produced. Jay and I put it together, Jay Messina and I. David played guitar, and I brought over my friend Chris from Brazil, who lives in England now, who tours with me in Europe. I brought him over to play some guitar, too. And Arjun, of course, was there, and Nina. So it's very good.
I remember when I was in Brazil, you connected me to stay with Christian's mom. I stayed with his mom in Rio.
Oh, really? How far out? Yeah.
He's a very sweet woman.
Yeah, he's great.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Much love.
All right.
Take
Much
good
love
care.
to you.